And we are live.
And we are live. What up, though, everybody? Welcome to Woodward Pistons Table Talk, the first and original weekly live Pistons talk show here on YouTube. I'm your host, Sean Murphy, alongside the other host, the hostess with the mostest, the man
What's
with
up?
Kool-Aid, no shade, all sugar, no cream. My man,
What up, though?
Kool-Aid. What up,
though,
though, man?
Hey, man, it's always great to see you beautiful people. It always is. I'm just looking around the panel and I'm like, hey, it's the bros.
Yeah, 100%. Man, you are coming from not the original setup. Kool-Aid, what are you up to, man?
Hey, look, man, had to get out with the family a little bit. Had to get out and do some business. Came up to Frankenmuth, man. Like, I love this area. I love the area. It's peaceful. Get up here with the family. And look, honestly, I'm really up here for the fried chicken. It's the best fried chicken in the state. It just is what it is.
It is. It is really good. They got some legit chicken up in Frankenmuth, I tell you.
I love it, man.
Speaking of finger licking good, also with us, my man, Carl Collins at Carl Collins Fry. My man, Carl.
Carl like that one.
How are we doing? You are on mute, so whatever you're saying, it's silky. Ooh, there's that silky smooth. That's like the butter on the biscuit at Kentucky Fried Chicken. You kidding me? Oh, wait.
What's good?
And also joining us, the resident Jaden Ivey hater. No, I'm kidding. He's like, yep, you're right. He is our draft analyst here at Woodward Pistons. He's also the resident skeptic, but also the professor, our man, Steve. However you pronounce his last name, Berke. Steve, it's a pleasure to see you as always.
Yeah, I'm just happy to be here. Still talking draft. The newest draft show just dropped with Ignacio Risotto over at Draft Digest. We talked Victor Wembanyama. He also updated us on Gabriel Procida, who's been over in the EuroLeague playing with Alba Berlin. So if you want to get an update on the Pistons second round pick last year. And then we touched a little bit on head coaching candidates we would like to see. He made an argument for Kenny Atkinson. We both talked about Charles Lee. I made one for Jama Mahalela. Go check it out.
Interesting.
Dope.
I like it. Well,
yeah, Steve's been crushing the content too, man. I've been more than pleased, more than entertained, and honestly, the biggest thing, more than educated. It's been informative, and it's Steve, I'm grateful, man. Thank you.
Steve, I have been more than whelmed. No, I'm kidding. Hey, that's a good thing, because if I'm that's a good thing. That's raising the expectation. Anyway, speaking of Steve, I like your thought, and I like the last thing you brought up, because that segues pretty well into what's on the hearts and minds of every Pistons fan right now, and that is who is going to be the new head coach. Over this past week, there have been several candidates who have been confirmed to be interviewing for the next Pistons job. None of those candidates are Ime Udoka, who is the hottest name supposedly on the coaching free agent market. We do know that he did interview with the Houston Rockets this week. It seems like, from all indications, and again, this is going to be a super thorough process. We all know how Troy Weaver works. It seems like the head coach of the Pistons could be a first-time NBA head coach. And quite frankly, that's something the Pistons haven't done in a minute. Like, wasn't the last one John Kuester?
I don't know. Ask him.
Yeah. Let's ask Joey D with all the coaching hires, because before him there was obviously Dwayne, and there was Stan Van, and then before Stan Van there was Mo Cheeks, there was Lawrence Frank, there was the amalgamation of all the coaches in there, but you had Flip Saunders, you had Larry Brown, but I think John Kuester was the only one that was the first time head coach that we had really done in a while. And even then, that was one within house. That wasn't that wasn't someone that they brought in to the organization. So this is something, for all intents and purposes, the Pistons haven't done in a long time. So if the Pistons are truly, going to go that route, which, as far as why Ime Udoka hasn't been interviewed, that could be something we talk about as well. But so as the process is going on and you guys are starting to see names that are being associated with this job, what are your guys' feelings? Steve, I know you brought up a candidate that you have. Who's on your short list of guys you'd love to see coach this team?
For
Don't all
me,
jump to talk at once.
I thought you called him Steve. We were supposed to start with
I thought
Jaden.
I thought you were starting with Steve, but
No. Somebody else go first because I have like a million thoughts on this.
All right, well, mine are pretty much the same as everybody else's. Charles Lee, Ime Udoka, and Jerry Stackhouse. For Jerry Stackhouse, it's just the familiarity with the city, the organization. He knows what Detroit's all about. He's had success at the college level. For Ime Udoka, I mean, it speaks for himself. I mean, he took a Boston Celtics team to the finals. A team that could be very much like our own. And then Charles Lee, he's a name who I hadn't really heard of much until recently, until this coaching search started.
Mm-hmm.
But he sounds like a guy that I would also be very interested in.
Yeah, he's, for those who don't know a whole lot about Charles Lee, he's been under Mike Budenholzer for about 9 years now. He was with him since his days in Atlanta. Which I think we've talked about this a little bit on Table Talk, and I know we talked about it on From Half Court. Mike Budenholzer low-key has one of the best coaching trees in the NBA right now. It's kind of crazy. But also, he's part of that, championship organization within Milwaukee. So I think, Steve, the thing that would intrigue me about him, I mean, you look at what Troy Weaver, talked about and what they're looking for in a head coach: discipline, development, defense. I think getting someone from the Milwaukee fold and the Budenholzer fold isn't a bad place to get that from, because a lot of, we look at the big names in Milwaukee. A lot of those names were ingrown talent or in-house developed talent. What are your thoughts, Steve?
Yeah, Charles Lee definitely has to be the top candidate, I think, right now because of that 9 years as an assistant. He was also a fantastic player at Bucknell, who took his teams as a junior and a senior to the NCAA tournament, made it to the second round in his senior year. I believe that Bucknell team, it's like 05 or 06. They had the greatest winning percentage ever in Bucknell history at like 25-2 or 27-2, something like that. Fantastic teams, and he's a point guard, so he's got that behind him. Ended up being a graduate assistant coach there at Bucknell, and then jumped on to Budenholzer's staff in Atlanta. And then he's just been with Bud ever since that whole time, both at Atlanta and both in Milwaukee. Won a title with Milwaukee. You definitely want that kind of experience from anybody. Is still a younger guy. I know the article Kool-Aid published on woodwardsports.com. Go check that out, because there's a nice link to an interview that he did about 3 years ago.
Contributions from Steve.
Yeah, so that one gives you his full story in detail and really gives you an idea of who he is. If you can find things on YouTube too, you see him working a lot with the younger guys. Bobby Portis in particular kind of pops up here and there. You can tell they both have like a chemistry. So you can see that bear out in how Bobby Portis has played as well. Has everything you want. The leadership, the experience, is also a player before, which doesn't always necessarily have to be the case, but I think it does help out and can manage personalities, and is a young guy, which I think should be something to consider, because they want this coach to, grow with the young guys on this team. Also, I always hate when it's like, we want to do what other people want to do, but come on, Mark Daigneault, Will Hardy, Taylor Jenkins, like all these guys were young up and comers. Even Mike Malone back in the day, right? They gave him a chance, and then he ended up working out. LOL, Kings fired him because they're stupid. But there you go.
Yeah, I think
I have a couple other candidates, but for sake of time, I'll cut it off there.
Yeah, and we'll dive a little bit more into that later. But one of the things that head coach is going to be able to do is they're going to have a dynamic backcourt to catch up, to especially help develop over this next season with not only Cade Cunningham, but Jaden Ivey and Kool-Aid. This guy had one hell of a performance over his rookie season, even though people aren't recognizing it, even though he didn't get the love of ending up in that top 3 of the finalists of that Rookie of the Year award. He still should be first team all rookie. And if he doesn't, I think we could arguably have even more of a reckoning than when Cade didn't get Rookie of the Year, because I mean,
that was honestly the question that I wanted to ask. It wasn't necessarily about the 3 finalists, because I do believe he was snubbed there. I just personally do. I believe he met and exceeded everything that people wanted to see from him. But I actually believe that the way things are trending now, that Jaden Ivey might get screwed from first team all rookie. Like, I really do. I like just the way that they kind of put the first 3 guys up there. Obviously, Paolo is going to be push button. They're going to make sure they honor Jalen Williams with what OKC has done. But, Kessler, I don't know. I feel like, Jeff said something very, very interesting. He was the same player he was at the end of the season to start this season. And the stats, they just don't, compared to what Ivy put up and the way he ended the season, they just, I don't know. It just didn't sit well with me to see him in not in the final 3. And it's really starting to feel like the NBA is going to say, you know what, since the Pistons didn't win, let's push him down and push Duren down. Obviously, it looks like the NBA is starting to value winning more. But I did want to get you all's thoughts on, the snub, not him not being included in that final 3, as well as, do you believe there's any way that the NBA gets this wrong? I'm going to say gets this wrong and leaves them off of that first team all rookie. And I feel like if there's an argument, Steve would be able to give it to us. But I don't know.
I'll just say it right now. There is no argument to leave him off first team, even for me. Like right now, it would be an egregious mistake to leave him off first team. If you just go and look on Basketball Reference at the 2022 NBA draft, the top guys in minutes for rookies this year: number 10, Walker Kessler; number 9, Tari Eason; number 8, Shaden Sharp; number 7, Andrew Nembhard; number 6, Benedict Mathurin; number 5, J-Dub from OKC; number 4, Jaden Ivey; number 3, Keegan Murray; number 2, Paolo Banchero; number 1, Jabari Smith. There you have it, right? That should be your first team, second team, and especially those guys that were in the top 4. Jabari, Paolo, Keegan Murray, Jaden Ivey. I guess we'll go over into Jalen Williams, that 5 there. I think that should just be the first team rookie, because all those guys were great, right? Maybe you can argue that Jabari Smith, needs to be thrown out of there, and like maybe Shaden Sharp or Walker Kessler goes in there in the first team. But come on now, like there's no argument now, because there's no out of those 10 guys, there's no other rookies that were better than that, right? And out of those 4, like how can you really keep those guys off the first team?
I don't know, bro. Like, Steve, like you're making me feel a lot more comfortable about it, but I'm really feeling as if like this, I don't know, these Pistons are going to get screwed. I saw a lot of people talking about it down the stretch, especially with Jalen Duren, stating, the time or the lack of time that he's getting. Are you guys going to, be mad or cop a fit or any of these things if these guys start losing out on awards? At the time, I was like, no, I'm not, because long-term is ultimately what matters. But I don't know, man. I don't know. I feel like, and obviously if he's not going to win awards, some people say, why put him up there? When I look at the metrics and I look at Jaden Ivey versus even Paolo Banchero, I understand that people are just going to push the button for him. But do you believe that there's any argument to be had between even Jaden Ivey and Paolo Banchero? I saw the numbers from Basketball Index. I saw what Cranges McBasketball had to say as well. I've seen what a couple people have had to say. And honestly, when you look at the numbers, when you look at the advanced stats, when you look at the metrics, if you take winning away, where is Ivy at in your eyes? Anybody?
I mean, I would say I think Paolo had a really impressive beginning, and I think a lot of people, myself included, I was infatuated with Paolo ever since we saw him play from the beginning of the season. But I think the big thing that we kind of, do with a lot of these players is, we get a temperature from how the season starts, and then, we just hold that narrative in. We kind of don't really change anything else. It's like, it's like you look at like, oh, Boston's the best team in the league by far. But if you look past the first month, they're like 15th in offense. They're 17th in defense. Like they're like middle of the pack in a lot of areas, for example. So, like with the rookie class, especially, I think that's an area just where in general, people aren't watching rebuilding teams. People aren't watching young developing cores and groups. So I think once they get their first impression and see, the first take they see on Twitter, it's like, all right, yep, groupthink. That's what it is. And, as awesome as guys like Benedict Mathurin were, and as great as Paulo was at the beginning, I think what we miss so much in these rookie classes is it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Like Jabari had a really rough beginning of his season. Jabari Smith Jr. played really well down the final month or two. Gives Houston a lot of hope for him going into next year. Like Paulo, like I think one of the big things he started out so strong, but then he hit the rookie wall. People figured out how to guard him, and then he went cold shooting. So I think, there's just a lot of different ways where this class, I think, and again, we do it with everything, right? It's like hindsight's 2020, but like, even like, if you can't look at what Jaden Ivey did at the end and not think, man, this guy's ceiling is enticing. The floor that, is seeming to be raised, but, it's going to be a fascinating couple of years, to say the least.
To go off what Sean said, first off, what's up, everybody? How y'all doing?
What up, though, Jalen?
Always got to start with that. You can argue, and I know Steve may think it's a little crazy. If you look at Paolo's numbers, like the first 2 months after the season started, they slow down. All-Star break, they slow down. Jalen Williams, he started off kind of okay, but he progressed the entire season. So people can argue him being Rookie of the Year because, Paolo started off strong, but he fell off. Jalen started off slow and then turned it up at the perfect time. Same with Ivy. So me, if I was voting, it could be like a wild card, poll. You can argue Jalen, Jade, and Paolo if you wanted to, but Paolo started off so well, I think, that we were kind of like Sean, we were like just hooked on him and what he was doing. But you can argue, J-Dub over there, like he started off slow, but it's about how you finish to me. And he's a rookie. He started off pretty decent. They made the playoffs, stuff like that. I don't want to put winning into it, but he was a key part of that team, during the season, just like Ivy was. So, I mean, Paolo probably will win the Rookie of the Year, but I'd argue like Jalen Williams and Jaden Ivey because they started off kind of not like bad, but not as good as you thought they were going to be. But when the season ended, they had stellar numbers. Paolo's numbers are okay, but he fell off very bad, in my opinion. But that's just how I look at it.
If you look at consistency, technically, I think I'd look at a guy like Walker Kessler. Like, even if he didn't have like the most impressive year of all the rookies, like statistically, I think he was the one that had an impact from game 1 to game 82, right? Like he was someone that was like vital to what they were doing and consistently was finding success. And, like, I think if you look at the, I think if you look at, who had the highest, like the highest performance or peak of any of this class, I mean, obviously Paulo looked like a man amongst boys. Literally, I remember first night he got 25 points and like 50% shooting. I was like, good Lord. But at the end of the day, I mean, if we're looking at who these players are at the end of the season, how we're feeling about them going into next season, the people who watched Pistons games down the stretch know just how damn good Jaden Ivey got towards the end of the year.
Yeah. With Jaden Ivey, and that's why I wanted to have the conversation, is because we saw a guy, at least I saw a guy named Grant Hill, who I thought should have won Rookie of the Year straight up. So this isn't something new. This is something that we had one of the most perfect, what I believe to be NBA prospects ever come into the league, and they made that man share, Rookie of the Year. And what was that, 95? I want to say. Was that 95? Yeah. I think it was 1995.
95, him and Kid.
Yeah, it was nice, but I'm sorry, man. What Grant Hill was. Now, Jalen Williams, I feel almost as if he has an opportunity to be the Scotty Barnes of this year, the guy who you want to look at team success as well as the role that he played. he seems to be the guy that ultimately fits. If you're going to get Scotty Barnes award last year, he seems to be the guy that gets it this year, because as good as Cade Cunningham was last year, as historic as he was as a rookie, it didn't really seem to matter. And I saw Pepega Jones. No, they didn't announce the first team yet. I think that there are some ballots and things like that have come out that from some of the writers that suggest Ivy might get snubbed, but he
was definitely snubbed from the final 3 of the Rookie of the Year award.
Yep, from the final 3. And it's I don't know. To me, I believe performance matters as a rookie. When you come into the league, it's not like you get to control where you are being drafted to. And sometimes when a team is only winning 16 or 17 games, how much worse are the Pistons if they don't have Jaden Ivey? There were times when Jaden Ivey was the only offense, and I don't believe, in the advanced stats that I saw Basketball Index posting, nobody else was carrying a load that Jaden Ivey was carrying. Nobody else was playmaking the way that Jaden Ivey was playing. Nobody else had to burden more of the offense than Jaden Ivey, because the other guys on his team, quite frankly, when there was no Bojan, when there's no Cade, when there's no Alec Burks, there was not a lot of fluid scoring on the squad. It was nights where you saw Jaden Ivey like, bro just got 30 points. In the second half of the season, when his legs are supposed to be gone, he just got 25. He just got 27. That second half of the season, as Jaden Ivey came down the stretch and was averaging the 20, the 8, and the 5, honestly was special to me. And I remember there was something that we've said on this table talk plenty of times about the chip that's being, grown on this team's shoulder. And they talked about that on at the season end exit interviews. They said, like, we know we're not getting certain calls. We know that people ain't really looking at us. We know that we have to win, though. We know that the only way people are going to look at us is winning. And that's something that Cade Cunningham said, too. Unless this squad wins, it's not going to really make a hill of a beans difference what these guys do now. I think this is the last year that these guys put in the work that they do, and they're not getting recognized for it. I wish the NBA would change things. I wish the NBA would move, or at least the media would move to a point where people actually watch the game. Like, I know when I get on this panel, I know exactly that Sean is going to binge watch like all the other games that's been on there. Sean sends me clips throughout the week. Like, hey, bro, did you see this? I'm like, I actually didn't. I didn't see. Thank you for sending me that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I know Jalen's in the games. Like, I know people are watching it, and it's like, so I trust the opinions here. That's why I know Steve, Carl, and so I was like, yo, let's bring this to the table and let's see exactly who Jaden Ivey is to this panel, who they believe Jaden Ivey should be. Because I do believe he should have been one of those top 3 finalists. I just do.
And I will say, by the way, I do think, I think Jalen Williams is similar to Scotty Barnes in the fact that he was the late bloomer and the guy that, really, took the class by storm. I think one thing that that differs from Jalen Williams to Scotty Barnes, I think with Jalen Williams, you have raw data and footage and things to show, oh, this guy can create for himself. He has great vision for others, and he's learning to score already. Whereas, I think Scotty Barnes, I just remember the argument being so specific and analytical. The amount of times I had to hear about his warp, I don't give a damn. You know what I mean? Like at a certain point, if you have to bring up warp and Raptor and not the team Raptors, Raptor, the analytic, as much as I like analytics, when we have to go that deep to make your argument, it just feels like a little bit of a forced argument. Does it not?
It does. It seems like at some point in time, we're not talking about basketball anymore. When players like Jaden Ivey and what he's done can completely get overlooked. I get it. I get the notion. Some people can be like, man, y'all are just homers. I promise you, we hoped for Stanley Johnson. We didn't believe. We didn't believe like we do right now in Ivey and Cunningham. We hoped for previous players. We did. We hoped like J Max would be the second coming of some of these previous big men. We had hopes. I'm gonna ask y'all on this panel. Out of all the hopes we had, did y'all believe? I think the only player that I actually believed in, and Blake Griffin doesn't count. He just doesn't count. It was honestly Andre Drummond.
Yes.
Since the breakdown of the going to work Pistons until today, until Cade Cunningham, there was not a player that I actually was like, yo, that's what I'm going to believe in, except Dre. It's been a long flipping time. Now we got 2 or 3 players with Cade, Ivey, and Duran where I'm like, yo, no, these guys are hoopers. Y'all are playing them. You guys are playing. There's gonna be a lot of media people, in my opinion, who are gonna look back, and when we look at some of these past rookie of the years, where are they at? Like, I'm just like, okay, all right, our guys are gonna show you because you're putting a chip on their shoulder that, honestly, it's what Detroit guys eat, consume, and then they do work with. We've seen all of our teams do this. I was just trying to figure out, where does this young team get it? And that's why, Steve, I'm glad when we went over the bad boys, we talked about, you know what? No, Isaiah Thomas.
Oh, that's a hot sweatshirt. I just now realized what was on there. I'm an idiot.
You're the saucy, man. That's why I was like, yo, when they drafted Isaiah Thomas to when they actually could be considered contenders, there was some time in between. There was some growth in between. But is anyone going to sit here and say that they didn't know that Isaiah Thomas was the man from the start? You know, it's just like, but I guess we should be used to it, man. Me and my son, we watched the Bad Boys documentary last night. So I'm used to our Pistons getting snubbed, man. I'm used to it. Jaden, you look like you down there thinking, man.
Well, I was thinking, but it was a food commercial on my TV, so I was like, huh. But no, I was thinking.
You were just thinking about your future, like where the mansion's gonna be, where the swimming pool on top of the swimming pool is gonna be.
It was a food commercial, and then I was thinking of what Piston that I had hope in, and I really didn't have him. Like Luke Kennard, I didn't like that one. KCP didn't know who he was until he got here. Yeah, Brandon Knight, I knew that wasn't gonna work.
All right. Yeah. Hold on. Let me
this is a good topic now.
Brandon Knight.
I don't believe in.
Brandon Knight was the one that I as a kid. Listen, I like growing up on YouTube. The first player that I found their mixtapes and highlight tapes in high school, and the hottest guy to watch on YouTube at the time was Brandon Knight. Some of you might not remember, but when Brandon Knight was in AAU in high school,
he was the one, bro.
He was the hottest prospect.
He was that
nation.
dude. He was that dude.
He was John Wall before John Wall. Like John Wall, like if he didn't, didn't have like the same, obviously didn't have the same height, but like coming into the league, when I saw we had Brandon Knight, absolute no knowledge of his college days or what he did leading. I was like, we just got that guy, the guy I saw on YouTube. Like I hadn't seen anybody in Detroit be able to do that. And so honestly, like I really believed. And then I saw Kyrie cross him up and I saw DeAndre slam him down. And when a dunk is so bad that the person that dunked on you went, your career's done. Like I don't think
I've defended somebody who got dunked on more in my life, bro. I defended him so much. Like he's the only one playing defense. And then but just look at this dunk again. I was like, oh, but he played defense. But dang, he got dunked on.
That was like the first like public moment, I think, where like all Pistons fans on Twitter were just like, oh man. Oh my God.
It wasn't technically his fault though. It was it Greg Monroe? Somebody didn't switch.
Somebody didn't drop.
When in doubt, it's Greg Monroe's fault.
They didn't drop. It was for sure not his fault. And he just had. And Brandon Knight's a small dude. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was funny, man.
Man, dog, that was a tough one. That was a tough one. I say, it's bad when the guy dunked on you. Was like, y'all remember that, man? That thing became T-shirts, memes, stickers, Abbeys, everything for a long time, boy. Oh my gosh.
It overtook all the YouTube highlights he had.
Jeez. But Sean, let's pick up this coaching search, man.
Hey, all you, man, go ahead, set it up. What do you want to talk about? What candidates are you hot on, Kool-Aid?
It's not necessarily about the candidates that I'm hot on, but is there a candidate that you believe best fits the philosophy that the Pistons are trying to do? I think some of the interesting characters or coaching candidates that's come up, Jaron Collins and Charles Lee, because of the other coaches that they've worked under, as well as the fact that those guys have been a part of championship-winning teams. Jaron Collins, obviously more so, but I've heard from because he was with the Warriors for three championship runs. whereas Charles Lee was with the Bucks for 1. But I've heard more specific things about Charles Lee being actually inundated and a part of the process with guys like Giannis and with guys like Drew Holiday and with some of the guys on the squad that you would consider to be the stars, some of the better players, as well as reports of him really, really, really being good with the younger players. I haven't really heard a lot of reports from Jaren Collins, but I love the fact that he is a part of the Willie Green coaching tree with the New Orleans Pelicans. Willie Green is somebody that I'm like, yo, if we could snatch him, if we could snatch a head coach and it's not Ime Udoka, I would love to be able to kick the tires on Willie Green, personally. That's just me. So I didn't know, man, if there's any coach, if you guys have had any time doing any reading, I know Steve has put in a lot of work in getting to know these coaches and such. But which one do you think best fits where this team is headed? Because we talked about voice. I heard someone say in the media sessions, are you hiring a coach to get a different voice? Troy Weaver said, nah, it's not necessarily for a different voice. So it got me to think, what type of coach are we looking at really? Because out of everyone he's hiring, it seemed like he's just taking a shot at everybody. Is there somebody that you guys think, nah, that's actually the coach he needs to go after, or that's the one that fits the Troy type mind?
I think for me, like, I think honestly the fact that, I think the fact that Charles Lee has that, that background, like all these seasons he's been in the Central Division now, I think he just has like an understanding of, what it takes to, to dominate in this conference, but also an understanding of like what it means to like be a part of like sustainable programs. Cause like, even though like Mike Budenholzer didn't see like a ton of like deep playoff success in Atlanta, that was a team that won for years in Atlanta. Like they played solid basketball. They were one of the best teams in the league every season. They just couldn't get over the hump. And then, obviously seeing what they did in Milwaukee and the freaking powerhouse that they look to be just completely out of nowhere. I just think, to me, I think that's what attracts me. But also, I think another guy that would be interesting is Chris Quinn from Miami as well. We talk about Heat culture. We talk about, everything that they've been involved, that they've done. He's 39 years old, a guy who, being one of the top assistants under Eric Spoelstra, who's one of the best coaches in the history of the league. I think he's a guy that fascinates me as well.
Steve, what's good, brother?
So yeah, like I'll reiterate again, Charles Lee, I think, is the top candidate. I also kind of think, no disrespect to who they've interviewed so far, who's been announced, I think they're kind of biding their time until the playoff coaches, the Chris Quinns, the Charles Lee, can be interviewed as well. The other name that's been floated around there is Adrian Griffin Sr., who's the dad of AJ Griffin on the Hawks. He's been an assistant with the Toronto Raptors for a very long time and was an NBA player before that. So really in total, he's been 15-year assistant. He had something like a 9-year NBA career. So he's been in the NBA for 24 years. If there's anybody that has that, there's very few other assistants that have, that kind of resume behind them that have never been a head coach before. So he's definitely there in the mix. The other ones that I would want to highlight, they haven't been announced, so this is just me riffing, is Jama Mahalela, again, the Warriors assistant. Coach Casey actually gave him his start in Toronto. He just grinded from the bottom. He was basically just like doing camps for them. And then Casey saw his passion, brought him in as a scout, ended up being on the Raptors 905, was a head coach there for a little while, then came onto the bench, was with the Raptors, then joined the Warriors, where he's been the last like 2 or 3 seasons. And really, he's been an assistant for a while now, from like 2014-ish, I want to say. And then with the Warriors last season, he helped them win the title. If you delve into his background, he really like knows everybody and is a leader who's super well organized, who makes sure like that every level of the organization. On the Warriors, he's done a lot of one-on-one work with Moses Moody, but any interview you see with him on YouTube or whatever, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Moses Moody, Kevin Looney, all these guys have nothing but great things to say about him. That to me always screams leadership, because if you're somebody that doesn't just cater to the superstars, you're somebody that's trying to help the rookie find his way, the guys at the bottom of the roster, that's always a good indication. Mike Wilkes is another one on OKC. He's like their assistant head coach. He was an NBA player, 7 years in the league, and then around 2014 again, joined 2012, excuse me. He was a scout for the Oklahoma City Thunder, grinded his way up through the ranks there again to be their lead assistant now. Super chill guy, has been OKC's interim head coach when Dagenot had to miss time, so he knows how to operate on the sidelines. Another good cerebral guy that really knows X's and O's. And I always like coaches that aren't just going to like, you know, fly off the cuff. And he's definitely one of the chillest coaches you will find out there. And then the last one to me, my dark horse candidate is Teaspoon, Coach Teresa Witherspoon down in New Orleans. Like, just look up any speech that she's ever given. She's a motivator. Not only that, 5-time WNBA All-Star, known for hitting the shot in WNBA history. Is in the Basketball Hall of Fame. You will find few coaching candidates with this level of resume. Has been a head coach at Louisiana Tech as well, where she helped that program make it to the NCAA tournament, win a couple conference titles there, had a 90-69 record in 5 seasons at Louisiana State. But since 2019-2020, Coach Teaspoon has been with the New Orleans Pelicans, really formed a super tight-knit bond with Zion Williamson. You can YouTube those clips to see their connection. But man, like, out of all these coaches, I think she's the best motivator out of the bunch. And if there's any woman coach in the league who's going to get a head coaching job, it's going to be Teaspoon because of that resume and because she really connects with players.
If she could get Zion connected to a basketball court, I think that would be incredible. But
get Zion connected to a diet plan. Come on now.
Just get him connected to the basketball court, man. Period.
So
whatever that may be, you know, if it's diet, whatever, you need to get it back. So
another guy you brought up earlier, and like, I know in light of, you know, like other Warriors assistants, Kenny Atkinson is a guy that's known to be a high candidate out there. I know Ime Udoka just spoke with the Rockets this week, as we discussed. Do you think, I mean, not only like the Pistons, potentially biding their time with the playoffs, trying to find time where they can actually, you know, interview these other coaches. Do you think it's also on the other end? Like, I know Troy Weaver said this wouldn't be an issue, but do you think coaches are waiting to see what happens with things like the lottery before they start discussing with teams and start figuring out? Because I do think that Detroit has one inherent advantage over other teams that are looking for a coach, which is that they're guaranteed at the very least a top 5 pick and have very good and have pretty high odds at a top 3 pick.
I can say this. Troy Weaver was actually asked that question in a press conference. Are you going to wait to see? Are you going to wait to see if there's a coach who says, "Oh, they got the number 1, number 2, number 3 pick"? Troy Weaver smugly said, "No. If somebody needs to wait for this draft pick to know what we're doing, I don't want them here." And I was just like, all right.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I was going to ask that. I was thinking it too. I'm like, well, thank you for asking that question. But yeah, I didn't know what he was thinking, because you're right. You want the best candidate. And if the best candidate is like, whoa, that's why it's going to be good for years. Yeah, you kind of want to wait. You know, the strategy feels like you want to wait, but Troy seems to be about the fact that either he has his mind on somebody, or either he knows he can get somebody. I don't know how you're that sure about it. You know what I mean? If a second or first overall pick can change the whole pool of free agents, coaches, trades, and even young, like undrafted players who want to come and play for your squad, you almost want to put yourself in position to be able to get that. But Troy Weaver operates in a way different than I've ever seen a Pistons GM operate.
I think, oh, my bad, Sean, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Jalen. I just have a hot, this take might spark a different side conversation. So you go ahead, and then I'll share my thing.
Okay. I made a tweet like about, I think the week they moved Casey, but I'm like, you know, coaches can't choose a team they go to. You know, Troy Weaver or the GM or whoever, you know, has to offer them a contract. So if you're going to wait to see if we get the number 1 pick, number 2 pick, like you said, as like a GM, you don't want to coach like that, because say if we don't, are you still going to be down to be on our team? Are you still going to be down to coach my boys that I have? And, you know, it's not like Ime Udoka just can be like, yeah, I want to sign with the Pistons. No, you're not a player. You're a coach. So, you know, I don't think he was the guy that I wanted at first, but I can see that may not happen because I haven't heard any news yet. So, you know, Chris Quinn, I think that's his name in Miami. He's nice. I remember he actually got drafted, I think, a while ago. He's nice. The guy in Milwaukee, I keep seeing him at the top of the list. Kenny Atkinson's always, like Sean said, always out there. But with these coaches, man, like you don't want a coach that's only going to wait around and see, are they going to sign this person in the free agency? Are they going to sign this person in the draft? Stuff like that. So you want a coach that, if that doesn't happen, they'll still be able to connect and coach the players, because you can't, coach off what ifs. It's like Willie Green in New Orleans, what if Zion plays? Do we make it to the first round? We make the second round. You can't coach off that because you never know what's going to happen. So I want a coach that's going to be here to, lock it down and just take what we have. And then if he can move that, then, I'll be happy. But I don't want a coach that's basing his, attitude and motivation off Victor, Wembanyama or Scoot Henderson or something like that. That's true, just not. It's just not a healthy coaching environment or a healthy, team morale.
Because what is that coach saying about himself?
Yeah, like it's just not a good way to go about things. So hopefully we get a coach that's, down for whatever pick we get or we sign, but you don't want a coach that's basing his choice off of the lottery, because that's not
supposed to coach up, not look at what the talent can do for him, but what he could do for the talent. I get that.
If you're a coach that isn't infatuated with Cade Cunningham, there's probably something that's a little bit wrong with you. But I kind of have this hot take where I don't want to make it sound like, I'm saying this guy's a bad coach. But do you think we're maybe overrating Ime Udoka just a little bit? Don't get me wrong. Getting to the finals your rookie year, that's a pretty dang good hit rate. But on the other hand, he also only coached 1 year, and he came in with guys like, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. There were other key coaches on that staff as well, like Will Hardy, who we've seen how great of a coach he's been, and people say behind the scenes he might be the real mastermind. Do you think maybe, I get it, he made the finals. Like if you're a fan looking for a coach, I get I get that part of it, but it's like, you maybe think he's a little overrated.
Well, if you're thinking that, and then you're wondering about the whole scandal thing, you kind of wonder, is it worth it? Would you rather go after a guy like Charles Lee as our number one guy? I see your point.
I don't know. I've asked that question because honestly, Udoka was a coach that, I don't know. The name just came up. Obviously, he's going to have a pedigree, and then it just became the hottest name, and then it became a scandal, and it still stayed as the hottest name almost.
Yeah.
And so it makes me think, if the league is like, we still got to interview this guy, it makes me wonder, how good is he really? Coach.
Yeah.
I think they do it based off of I think a lot of it has to do with last year, but he was under Pop, so people who are under Pop usually end up pretty well. You got Becky Hammond coaching WNBA. I know that's different, but he's a champion now. She was a good assistant coach. So I think they based that a lot off of him being under Pop. And last year was a great season, but I feel like too, I think one of the comment, it's like Steve Kerr. You give Steve Kerr all those guys, even Kevin Durant. I'd win too probably if I was coaching. So it's 50-50. I'm not saying he's a bad coach. He may actually be like that, but I do like Sean's, hot take.
He's a damn good coach. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. I'm not saying this guy's a fraud. All I'm saying is we're acting like Phil Jackson's on the market.
Let me help you out here, Sean, actually. Because in that article that Steve referenced earlier, we talked about what's his name? Who's the assistant coach? Jerome Allen. Jerome Allen got praised by Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, all those guys. And he was an assistant there underneath Udoka with the Celtics from what? He was with the Celtics, I think, from 2015 to 2021, I want to say, before Jerome Allen got hired to the Pistons. And they credit Jerome Allen for a lot, for connecting with the young players, for being somebody who didn't take no BS, for being somebody who pushed them beyond. And I think I put some of those quotes in the article about Jerome Allen as well. He was somebody that was there. Their assistant coaching staff was solid. And I know that Udoka, I see some people saying in the comments as well, coming from the Greg Popovich coaching tree, Look, that's awesome. That does not necessarily ensure success. That doesn't necessarily ensure that somebody can come in and drive the vision the way you want it to be driven.
It doesn't make them pop.
It doesn't make them pop at all. And it's like, it's hard to judge Udoka. Like I said, the fact that the NBA is still saying he's a guy we got to kind of still keep on our short list to be interviewed makes me say he's a guy that you would love the Pistons to be able to at least just talk to. But if they have their standard, if Troy Weaver is pushing something to his young guys, then I understand if Udoka doesn't wind up on that list. But he is very intriguing because he's won. I can't really find a negative in his actual coaching acumen or his coaching history or anything. So that's a tough one, man. But the support staff he's had around him has gotten rave reviews.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just like a big thing, to consider as well is just like, Troy Weaver did bring up during media day that they hope to have a resolution soon on the Rob Murphy situation and, what's going on within that, within the scope and confines of that. So if you're the Pistons organization, you could just be, full stop, just weary of, even having that conversation just because of that. And to Charles' point, he actually, Ime Udoka was actually the runner-up candidate for all intents and purposes to Dwayne Casey when Coach Casey was brought in. So, yeah, he was interviewed the first time around. But a lot has changed since that time. A lot has changed.
A lot has changed, bro. Hey, I don't know. That's a good question, man. That's a good question because I don't know. Yeah, I'm sitting here sometimes like it feels like that's supposed to be the button we push. Like Udoka, we have a team that's on the up and coming. He's already been associated with this type of a kind of rebuild. Now, I get it. The Celtics to me were more established, better foundationally set when he stepped into it. And you're right to ask that question because you think the Raptors asking that question right now? Nick Nurse was the next best thing since sliced bread.
I heard how, talk about the next pop. I mean, this man was a basketball wizard. I mean, this guy knew everything. This guy was talked about like Matt Patricia. I'm sorry. Well, like, cool. You had Kawhi. You won a championship. You rode off Pascal and went to the conference finals in a bubble.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, Derek.
Yeah, if I had that voice, I'd be narrating like romantic novels or like talking over smooth jazz.
Yeah, I hit up Morgan Freeman to be my mentor.
Let's rock
for narration. But yeah.
Sheesh. Yep, that's a good question to ask, Sean. It is a good question. Like, I don't want to take anyone's accomplishments away from them. It's on paper, you know what I mean? It's a team, and it's hard to really parse who does what. But when you look at the whole Dwayne Casey, Nick Nurse thing, and we know that no matter what you think of Dwayne Casey as a coach, he did set a foundation. He did help. There are players there that credit him the same way that we're going to hear people like Udoka credited, man. That's what we're hearing. But if Nick Nurse came in, Kawhi Leonard, LeBron James gone, wins the championship, and since then everything's kind of been in decline mode, is that something that can happen with Udoka? Man, oh my gosh. The comments are crazy.
2 women just got pregnant listening to man. Carl.
Oh,
that's hilarious.
Yeah. You can do it.
Oh my gosh, man. That is crazy. Oh my gosh.
2?
2.
Not 1, but 2, I guess.
Damn.
And Chuck just likes it all, bro.
Oh my gosh. Goodness, I think, ultimately whoever's selected and like, it seems like it's going to be a very thorough process. Omari Sankofa wrote a pretty good article about how, there's been a really good track record with hiring first-time young head coaches. And in recent past, that's really benefited a lot of young teams. I look in particular in Oklahoma City, and I'm totally blanking on his name right now. I totally need to look it up.
Mark Dagenot.
Yep, Mike Dagenot. The job
Mark,
he's done.
Mark.
Mark Dagenot. Mark Dagenot. The job he's done in Oklahoma City.
One more time for a fact. Please say his name.
Mark Dagenot.
There we go.
Oh my God. Said it, dang it.
Hey, good evening to you too, KDA. You came at the right time.
Perfect time.
I love it. Hey.
But yo, what up, Charles?
What up, boys?
Man, we're at the gun show, Charles.
Hey, nah, I was just gonna explain, bro. I'm all my laundry's like at the laundromat right now, so I literally only have ears right now, so I had to put one on.
At least you got the Pistons hat on, though.
Yeah, I had to get some Pistons gear at least.
Hey, look, bro, you got the comments, man. They're here for you.
I swear, it's just my laundry, dude.
Oh my God, man.
I love it, man. I love this crew, man. See, Charles, man, listen. Who do you believe the Pistons should be looking at for coach, man? And Sean raised a good question as well. Do you believe that, Ime Udoka is somebody that's going to fall off, or do you believe he's somebody that you can trust in what we've seen already?
So, I
didn't ask if he's going to fall off. I said, is he a little overhyped?
Yeah, so I don't really have a true issue with any candidates, to be honest. I really like Charles Lee, the Bucks assistant. I think he could do great things. I really think he's probably my favorite option. But again, I don't think there's like a really bad option. Like the Ime Udoka thing is tough just because it's. I think he's a really good coach. It's just tough for me because he's been out of the game now, I think, for a little bit. So I don't know if maybe I'm wrong around that, but I think he's been out of the game, like out of coaching at least for a little bit.
Out of this, yeah, he had to sit out this year.
Yeah, so I don't know how that would affect his coaching, but I think maybe taking off a year could, have a little bit of an effect on him. But like I said, I think the best option I think my favorite option is Charles Lee. I mean, I think that'd be the best one for me, but I think they can't go wrong. I think that they're in a good position.
Carl was over there like, nah, he's still good.
I mean, that's like riding a bike, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
Man.
Yeah. And it's like, even though these and I think like, even though these guys, aren't experienced like head coaches in themselves, it doesn't mean these aren't experienced leaders. And I think it's important to like point out the fact how much experience between a lot of these candidates there are, like finals experience, conference finals experience, playoff games. Like these are young coaches who can show these players that these goals are attainable. They've been there recently.
Right.
My thing with Charles Lee, the only knock I have on Charles Lee, and I think a lot of people overlook this, but having a player, generational talent like Giannis makes anyone look better. So I don't know how that would translate to the Pistons, but I know we don't have anyone near as good as Giannis right now.
Wemby. Wemby's on his way, man.
Carl!
I love it.
I would say, and I'm sure Steve would probably agree to this. I would say, like, yes, Giannis certainly makes your job in the office a lot easier, makes your life a lot easier. It's also everyone around Giannis that allows him to be as great as he is. Like, part of what makes him dangerous is the defense that he can bring on the back line. And what makes him even more dangerous is they have guys like Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton on the front line, and the way they scheme things. Like, we've seen mediocre coaching with Giannis. Jason Kidd was a coach of the Milwaukee Bucks. Like, we've seen what it's like when schematically it's not all put together. Mike Budenholzer and his staff were the ones that were brought in to help bring it to the next level. Namely, on the defensive end was when they really brought it different. Part of that was some of the roster changes, but at the same time, I think they brought a lot of that discipline, a lot of that development, a lot of that defense, but I think they also brought the schematics that could unlock Giannis. Does that make sense? Like, I think whereas like Cavaliers in 2007, 2008, that was LeBron.
Yeah.
Like, as good of a coach as Mike Brown was at the time, as good as some of the players were on their team at the time, it was LeBron. Like, what do you want me to say?
I will say that I think Troy Weaver has to take into account like who he kind of is targeting in the draft, because I think whoever he targets in the draft is going to have a coach centered around that player's strengths, obviously. So I don't know. I think maybe I would wait a little bit, but I think we have to get a coach who is going to be able to, progress the talent we take at whatever pick we get. So I think we have to wait on that a little bit as well.
Well, the thing he said with that was that they kind of already have a program and a voice. And so whatever coach they get is going to be somebody who kind of sits as not a figurehead, but somebody who's going to usher in that voice. And he did identify that they can bring that person in before or after the draft. He's not necessarily basing his decision on that. He did say the coach is going to have some gumption in player development. But the reason why that's not as important is because they still have Dwayne Casey here and John Beeline and the support staff and the people that they're going to also bring in. Like, they're not done. Like, Dwayne Casey's job is not finished. The guys they're going to bring in are going to do a good job focusing in on how these players can get better, which means a new coach can honestly come in and have a full-on support staff and focus on kind of the ins and outs of in-game decision-making. How do you prepare your players for the road trips and do things so that this team looks better, even better, more better on the court? I think one of the things that people discussed with Coach Casey was maybe his X's and O's aren't putting some of the younger players on the offensive and defensive side in their best spots. That maybe he's trying to fit them into a system that might not necessarily get the best out of them. And so that's where I'm hoping that a new coach, and I definitely want to get you guys' opinions on it too, where when a new coach is coming in, I'm hoping that it's related to schematically, offensively and defensively, that's where this coach makes the biggest push. I believe player development-wise, I think they got a lot of that already.
So what is Dwayne Casey's new role exactly?
I don't think he even knows. I feel like it's a new role in the organization, but they just knew that they needed to keep him around because he's that valuable.
Yeah,
he said it. He said he didn't even know what that role would bring at the press conference. At least,
I think it's safe to say, just knowing who Dwayne Casey is as a man, I'd imagine there's going to be some advisory, roles and aspects within that. I'm sure he's, going to have a hand in, some form of conversations about scouting. But I think ultimately, like, Dwayne Casey's a teacher, I think like whatever that guy's going to do, I think you're going to, like, even though he's going to be like, ultimately his job's going to be in the front office, I think at the same time, you're going to have a hard time keeping him away from the basketball court. And I think like an important thing too, like, I know, like, Charles, I think it's like a fair point and like something to like think about of should we wait to see like where we're going to be in the lottery before we make a coaching decision? But what I would say to that, to quote Troy Weaver himself, from day one, I was never dependent on the lottery. I was raised to make $1 out of 15 cents. And so I think, I think no matter who the Pistons are getting in the lottery, we know what we're building because they're building the Pistons. And that wasn't ever dependent on a star or on a player. That's dependent on defense, motor, intensity, teamwork. And so I think regardless whoever we get in the lottery, I think, especially with Cade and, the foundational pieces we have, I think there's a lot of reason to be comfortable, with whoever they bring in as coach.
Yeah. And Weaver did speak on it. Yeah, and they're right. Casey said he doesn't know exactly what his defined role will be. He did say he had a feeling it would be somewhere in player development. And that's what Troy kind of echoed too. They don't have a defined role, but Troy Weaver said that since he's gotten here, he has depended on Casey, both on and off the court, as has a lot of these players. Casey is somebody who has focused on trying to make sure that these young men can become not just NBA young men, but Detroit young men, like Detroit representatives. That's something that he was very, very key in. A lot of players, when you listen to them, when you get into the nitty-gritty of why they appreciate Dwayne Casey, they state it's because of those types of things. Troy Weaver talked about at the press conference too that, you know, when he got here, when he and his family moved here, if it wasn't for Casey, the transition would have been rough. That Casey was somebody who acted more like family to him, more so than, hey, new boss type of guy that you didn't hire me, you know. And even then, when Troy Weaver got here, there was a sit down between, and they talked about this. Casey talked about this. There was a sit down between Gores, Casey, and Weaver. It was during that time that Casey actually made his commitment to the rebuild, to the restoration, to the organization, to be here to focus on make sure the foundation was right and that the players that Weaver identified could, at this point in time, Cade, Ivey, Duren, they needed that nucleus of 2 or 3. They wanted a nice core 4, and I believe that they still have that to this day. If you want to include or drop Stewart in there or Wemby, because he's on the way. You know, yeah, that was his job at that time. And the players all spoke about the fact that they still have his voice in the building. He's still going to be somebody they can lean on as it relates to not just the on-court stuff, but the personal things too, because how much family do they really have in the NBA? You know, same roles and all that, but they said Casey really brings family atmosphere.
I'll tell you what I'm excited for, man. I'm excited for year 4 Killian.
We'll get to there in a second. There is like, you know, like one thing I did want to say on that light, like remember what they said about Dwayne Casey with, you know, like when Tom Gore said in his statement, like he brought in Dwayne Casey to be a partner. And, you know, when, you know, he is a partner to Tom Gores, he was someone that had a big voice in the team going in the different direction with the rebuild or, you know, with the restoration. So I think, you know, ultimately, I think, you know, like whatever that role is, it's clearly going to be a very close, you know, like it's going to be a very prominent voice in the organization, someone that's going to be working closely with both Troy Weaver, but also, you know, communicating closely with Tom Gores. And I'm sure helping formulate like what type of, you know, vision alongside with Troy they want to see going forward. I mean, you know, when it comes to building a program, Dwayne Casey has a lot of experience in that. And the fact that they have guys like him and John Beilein, like just real quick, like those guys alone just in the building, like that's a true commitment from Tom Gores on player development and coaching to a different level than a lot of teams are getting in the league.
Yeah, I was just going to agree with you, just backing you up on that. You know, John Beilein was a guy known for building a program that, you know, we hope, you know, Juwan Howard he can pick it up and make sure this team is moving in a direction that Beilein. Oh my gosh, look at Carl.
Beilein, by the way, he was being interviewed for the head coaching job around when Dwayne Casey was too. He was being talked about in that conversation. Tom Gores went and got both. He got both.
If he gets all 3 of the coaches that he interviewed before he hired them, yo, that would be pretty awesome.
Beilein's Cavs tenure was not very, very good, but I'm glad he ended up back in Detroit.
I mean, listen, it's one thing to, or I'll say this, it's one thing to be the head coach of a basketball team and like an NBA team, especially a team that's, you know, trying to take steps and, you know, has like weird different voices in the locker room. Some young guys who are trying to develop, some vets who want to win now. It was a very weird locker room. But I'll also say that there's a difference between that and just helping a guy with his jump shot in the gym. Like John Beilein, he's obviously a guy that can, you know, he can relate to a certain level, but at the same time, he's a guy that works better in particular with young men, with guys who are, you know, who are around that age, who are still developing in their game. So I think for him just to, you know, like have that, as great of a coach as he is, I don't know if he fit the NBA game. And if he did, I don't think Cleveland was the right place for it to be. However, I mean, to John, you know, Coach Beilein's defense, you never know when a great time is to take the jump. And now he was at a point where that was his chance, right? So.
Yeah. And I'm glad Chuck put this up on the screen too, because a lot of times we ask, what are these guys actually doing? People were here for a long time talking about oh, John Beilein broke Kay Cunningham's jumper and all this other stuff. It's like, y'all actually know what Coach Beilein is doing here? Coach Beilein is not a guy who just brought 3-point shooting to Michigan. He was a guy who taught consistently. His teams were undersized, but they defended and they rebounded and they played bigger than they actually were. John Beilein coached that out of these guys. He coached that out of these guys. And so it's like, you know, when I heard Ivy talking about that, you know, on one side, you got Cade talking about the fact that John Beilein and some of the work he's putting in to get his shot more, like, less flat, because he said it flattened out when he got to the league. Yes, he's helping with that. But on the flip side, you got Ivy talking about, you know, the fact that, you know, Coach Beilein is helping him with his defense. That about halfway through the season, he said, yo, I went to the coach and I was like, yo, Ivy said it like this, like, it takes a lot, but I came to the realization that my defense was costing us games. It was costing us wins. And so that prompted him to go to Coach John Beilein and ask him, can you help me work on defense? And he started specifically talking about man-to-man, passing lane, help side, pick and roll, all different types of things, drop down. And it's like, that's what I want to hear, man. That's what I want to hear. That the coaches that are on the staff, they're not just there in name. Because I believe that a lot of people thought John Beilein's just here because legendary coach, just give him his roses at the end of it. Maybe he's just teaching the guys to shoot. Nah, these guys, and I assume that Dwayne Casey is going to be the same way. I believe these guys are in there actually doing work to try and move this program forward. I really do.
Without a doubt. We just got a chain of emojis going on in the chat. I love it.
I see it.
And, you know, like it is like, you know, it is interesting because the Pistons have like, it's crazy. Like they have multiple big decisions to make this offseason and like multiple transformative moves that will shape the future of, you know, of the franchise and where we're going moving forward. But at the same time, I don't think I can recollect myself being as confident in the decision maker that's going to put those pieces in place like I have been with Troy Weaver. What's the, I guess, no, never mind. Is it too, is the praise like, you know, I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, it's got to come down to wins though. It's like, I know a lot of people, you know, look at the wins and loss column of Troy Weaver's. Like, do you think we're overhyping Troy Weaver? I guess is where I'm asking.
You know what? No, because I'm about to make a Troy Weaver hype video. So there's no overhyping Troy Weaver.
Jalen got excited there.
Now remember about 3 weeks ago or whatever it was, I questioned the same thing. I was like, Are we being spoiled by Brad Holmes, or are we, you know, because I said this is his third year, right? Third or fourth? Which one is it?
It's
his third
going
fourth?
in. Yeah, I think it's going into his fourth season.
Yeah,
with the team.
Okay, so going to the fourth year. Remember, I was like, you know, did we get lucky with Cade, or was it just, you know, could anybody have gotten Cade? And now 2 years have gone by, right? Injuries alone have ruined a lot of our success, so I won't fault him there. But like I said, like, you know, this summer, for me, like I said back then, I don't want to like be too hard on him, but I'm worried because if this summer doesn't go as planned, then what are we going to say about him? Because he has success in OKC. We know his work, but this summer, like, you know, me and Kool-Aid, I think you talked about, like, this is the summer that we need to see some, you know, major moves, the draft, and then as the season goes on, if we're healthy, I like to see it. But I'm gonna give him to the summer, you know, let it play out and see how, you know, our players stay healthy and stuff like that. I won't be too hard on him yet, but this is my year that I'm gonna, you know, either stay on the train for Troy, or I may hop on a midnight train to Georgia somewhere. It'll
be interesting though, because he could go, you know, he could get Wemby, go after and go and sign Cam Johnson and hire Ime Udoka. And if we win less than 20 games, it's a failure, because
I
That's
just don't
how.
see how that's even humanly possible.
I'm just
things
I'm
happen.
just saying if
man,
I'm
the
saying
luck we've had, like that would have to be like a freaking bingo card of cluster. Like my gosh.
I'm saying if that happens, even if that happens and we end up somehow losing, the same amount of games, like of course people are going to see it as a failure. But also those people are those are the same people. Those are the people who wanted the same all three things to happen. It's like I don't know if you can really. I don't know.
I just catch myself going like there's times where, like in the back of my head I'm like, is Troy Weaver like a top 5 general manager in the NBA? And I'm like, whoa. I'm like, I get you. And I'm like, in fairness, the record wouldn't show that. I'm like, but like the talent evaluation, like just like the hit, like relatively speaking, his hit rate on picks, it's just like I'm just like sitting here like getting blown away by that. And then I see like some of the transactions and now like the potential rumors of like could Jeremy Grant perhaps come back into the organization. And then you talk about the potential of Jeremy Grant being traded to Portland in order for them to get Jalen Duren, which also potentially opened the window for them to get Victor Wembanyama, for only Victor Wembanyama to come in and then Jalen Duren to come in and then also to have Jeremy Grant come back. Like if that happens, that's one of the greatest trades in NBA history, right?
Right. If this is a wild hot take, so don't burn me in the comments. If this was college and Troy was like a recruiter, he'd be top tier. Top tier, because
he'd be putting him up a coach.
Look at who we have on our. If this was a college recruiter and he wanted to go get 4-star, 5-star players, he'd be great because that's what he has on our team. If you look at their stuff, but I just feel like we have a lot. We have the tools. It's just that we haven't won. So
there's 1-2. You said what?
I said we had the tools. We just haven't won any games yet. So I mean, it's not.
There's been 1-2 we haven't had, and that's been money. We haven't had no cap space.
That's two.
You got to think, this is the first year they got cap space. So this is how I want you to judge Troy Weaver. No cap space, right? When he signed Jeremy Grant, everybody said, where the heck did that money come from? He's signing Jeremy Grant and Bojan Bogdanovic and giving them extensions with no money. I don't know what he's going to do with money. So it's not just that he's going out there and getting young talent, but he also knows how to go and get like a Trey Lyles and a Josh Jackson, flip them for Marvin Bagley, who could be an asset this offseason. There are teams that will look at a Marvin Bagley and say, we know how to utilize him. On a good team, you could, in my opinion, the same way you were able to flip a Jeremy Grant for a low-level first-round pick, I do believe that in the right deal, the right situation, you can flip Marvin Bagley to the right team and get something similar. I do believe that. And so it's like when I look at what Troy Weaver's done, he's shown that with minimal assets, he can flip an entire roster over. He can change a roster over in a heartbeat. He can get an influx of talent in here. He can get you an influx of draft picks. I've never seen that. Like, let's not even say talent evaluator. He could have blown all of those picks. But the fact that he was able to get them, those are the things I'm looking at. He's able to get you every asset you need to the point that if he's making the wrong decisions, then get him an assistant who can make the right decisions with the assets that he can make happen. I wasn't expecting to be a top 3, top 4, top 5 team in cap space within 4 years of him being here because I just haven't seen a GM do that in Detroit.
Well, again,
especially given our small market and given the amount, like we were playing. I think Blake Griffin just got off the books. Like what? Was it last year?
Blake, Dre, Josh Smith. You know what I mean? We had a lot of money, man. I know that Dre was an instant trade to get him off the books, but yeah.
Has he gotten more high-end draft talent than any Pistons general manager of the last 30 years?
You gotta go back to Plosky, man.
By far, he's the best. He's got the most.
Like just in 3 years, more young, interesting prospects. Which, granted, yes, some of that was like their positioning in the lottery, but at the same time, you also need a guy like who knows how to pick guys in the middle of the draft too. Yes, we see Cade, we see Ivy, but like Duren was in the middle of the first round. Isaiah Stewart was in the middle of the first round. Killian Hayes was in the middle of the lottery. Like a lot of these guys, like Troy Weaver backed up what he said about, making $1 out of 15 cents. He's done that over and over again. And I'm excited to see, we're talking a lot about this potential lottery pick. you know, in the top 5, the Pistons also have the 31st pick in the draft. 2 picks in the top 31. And I'm not saying that's like an incredible pick, but as far as the second round goes, it's the closest you can get to a first round pick.
I feel like we won't be picking 31 though.
What's that?
I feel like we won't be picking 31.
You think that could be traded?
I think it's going to be. He likes to give away those, or not give away, trade or utilize those second rounders for other things.
He also got Isaiah Livers in the second round, though.
True.
The $45 million in cap, I did want to address this. That's a little disingenuous because they had to trade Jeremy Grant for effectively just a draft pick. They had to get him off the books to be able to open up a certain amount of cap space, and then they used that cap space to effectively the players on the roster who are getting raises that next year for the next season, and then bringing in Bojan Bogdanovic. So they effectively just kind of turned that space over.
Yeah. The draft was also a month before free agency, so they didn't pivot from Ayton. That was the plan all along. But okay.
Yeah. Yep. And Rod actually, when we talked about it on the table talks, I think you actually came on one of the pods close to that time. And we all kind of talked about like, yo, Ayton would be cool when we kind of bantered about it, but we were like, is there something that he can do in this draft? We kept saying, bro, if he gets a second draft pick, we think he's going to get Benedict Mathurin or Jalen Duren. We kept saying.
Yeah, and we did say, too, as good as, because the big gems of last year's free agency class are Jalen Brunson and potentially DeAndre Ayton. We said if outside of that, if they're not going to get free agent talent, maybe Troy Weaver will stack and defer that money to the next offseason, which is exactly what he did because this is a deeper free agency pool. Even though there might not be high-end talent, there are multiple wings and guys who can come help you right away. Like, I know.
Now, bro, lead us into that, the free agency.
Yeah. So I saw James Edwards III do a really good article talking about like what his ideal Pistons offseason would be. And some of the players, that we keep commonly talking about are guys like, Cam Johnson, who's hooping right now in the playoffs, who I would love to see in a Pistons uniform. There's guys, as well, like Yuta Watanabe that James wrote about as well as like potential, like under the radar, guys who fit as far as like defense, shooting, like that type of thing. I know there's some pretty tantalizing names like towards the top of that free agency class. But like, what are some names that you guys would like to see in like a Pistons uniform? Like it doesn't even have to be a flashy name. It could be a role player. It could be someone that's a bench player. Like looking at some of the things that we have this offseason, I mean, there's a levy of talent available. Let me pull up the full list of free agents, but I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts.
Yeah, we talked about some of these free agents too, and we know like Troy stated that the one tool they don't have is the 3-and-D wing. They're hoping that Isaiah Livers can be someone who can maybe not be that starter, but be somebody effective. And Troy also said something very, very interesting. He said he would have 5, and I think I said this wrong on the last table talk. He didn't say he would have 5 creative guards. He said he would have 5 creatives on the court at all time if he could. So that's if they're big and they can handle, like Wemby. Like we've seen little flashes out of Jalen Duren in the half-court set and James Wiseman in full-court sets. He wants guys that can create, guys that have high basketball IQ, things that we've all talked about on this show. Based on that, Steve, I know you've been doing some deep dives. Jalen, I know you've been looking at some stuff as well. I know there's a name we brought up, Jordan Clarkson, that you said you liked on the other pod. And I know, Steve, you probably got some guys. Sean looks like he's chomping at the bits, bro. So I got Sean. Okay, who you pulling up? Let me put this on the screen. Bring him home. Let's bring him home.
Let's start a dialogue. It's time to start a dialogue.
I'm with you on that one. That's a wild card.
Still is Joe Dumars right now.
I mean, listen, man. The Washington Wizards just dismissed their GM of over a decade. Like, if I remember correctly, the Washington Wizards, like, the owner of the Wizards also owns the Capitals, and he's very much like a family business type guy in the sense that, like, whoever he hires, he likes to keep them for the long haul. And Bradley Beal was even saying how he's not happy with what's going on in DC either. So some shakeups are coming to the nation's capital. All I'm saying, Kyle Kuzma, granted, he's going to be a hot commodity this free agency class. Look out for teams like Phoenix. Look out for teams like the Lakers. Look out for other teams that are looking to get some depth. But Kyle Kuzma in a Pistons uniform definitely is tantalizing.
This, bro, you got the comments split already. It's a couple ads and don't do it. And it's a couple bring them home. I'm rocking with Kuz as long as he knows it's K's team now. I
mean, Kyle Kuzma's not going to be a franchise player wherever he goes. Like that ain't happening.
Steve over there doing work right now, bro. I gotta hear what's on your mind, bro.
What position does Kyle Kuzma play?
I'd throw him at 3 or 4.
What position does he play?
He sounds like a Batman. Tell me.
That has to be the starting conversation. If he's not a small forward, then they can't afford to put him there. Then you're pushing Beef Stew aside. If you draft Wembanyama, then you probably can't go with Kuzma because you need that space there, right? If they want to do the 2 big man lineup again, that just leaves space there. I mean, in theory, I get it. Yeah. But the thing is, again, he's not a small forward. He's been more successful at power forward. The last 2 seasons with the Wizards, he's had usage of 24.2% and 27.9%, both career highs. He's not a 3-point shooter, which, again, is what they need in that third guy between Cade and Ivy. He's, for his career, 33.8. Last year, put up 7.5 threes at 33%. That's not bad, but still, again, it's not going to cut it. And we're going to have to probably max him, right? Like, whoever's going to go after him is going to have to give him a big contract. To me, I'm like, Cam Johnson makes way more sense. Everything that the team would want is Cam Johnson. Yeah. Awesome 3-point shooter, one of the best in the league. Actual small forward. Probably not as good on defense, but fits the small forward role. Whereas Kuzma, it's not there.
Steve, man.
So you're saying there's a chance.
They love you, Steve. They love you.
Just when I think you can't get any dumber, you go and do something like this.
No, I think it's an interesting name though, and I think you bring up a lot of, good points. And listen, I think, I think unapologetically, I pretty much made it clear. Cam Johnson is like, if I were to have my dream of because he fits the mold of experienced. He's young. He could fit with this core, but he can play now. He's a guy who was clearly shown in Brooklyn that you can give him some more responsibility. The reality is they're going to break it up in Brooklyn because they just have too many freaking wings, man. It's like this isn't Buffalo Wild Wings, brother. This is a basketball team. We got to build it around a little bit. So
there's no Detroit Wing Company up in here.
No. Speaking of, man, I want some wings now. Damn it, Sean.
Hey, look, bro, Bavarian Inn, they got 50-cent wings, but
hey, can I say something real quick? Somebody's talking about you have to overpay Cam Johnson. You will also have to pay Kuzma because other teams are bidding for him. He's an unrestricted free agent. If that contract starts to get over $30 million, I'm out, right? Ain't nobody want to pay Kuzma $30 million.
Yeah.
There's also a thing with restricted free agents called a sign-in trade. So you don't necessarily have to drive the price up insane. However, if there's a position you're going to overpay for in the modern NBA, it's going to be the 3-and-D wing. That's the hottest commodity. That's the grand prize. That's the thing that's hard to find.
Hey, Carl. Hey, before you dip off, bro, thanks as always, man, for joining the crew. It's always good to see your face, man. And it's
Appreciate
always good. Give us a sign off. I'm about to say, man.
Great to hear you, beautiful.
Smooth.
This is Carl Collins Productions signing off.
Ooh!
Let's go.
Ooh!
You're listening to Woodward Pistons Table Talk every Thursday night at 8:30. I can't.
Tell them it's jazz o'clock, cool it, Carl. Tell them it's jazz o'clock.
It's jazz o'clock.
Yeah! It's jazz o'clock. Time to rock. Here with Carl Collins.
Man, y'all say bye to Carl and follow this man. He's dropping heat.
5 more kids were conceived. Man, my boy Carl's like cheaper by the dozen whenever he opens his mouth. Golly.
I'm about to start
What other show on Pistons Twitter you see it do this? That's all I'm saying, man.
Carl, you're responsible for 7 kids being born, or 7 kids being a woman being impregnated tonight. How do you feel before you leave? That's your last question for tonight.
Your wife's walking by like, what the hell?
What the hell? I let you go down and have your table talk, and this is how you repay me?
7 women are pregnant now.
All right, guys.
All right, Carl, love you, buddy.
We'll see you next week. See you guys.
Always great seeing you.
Yes, sir. Oh my gosh.
That man is just, we don't deserve him, yet we got him. Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
Yeah, I think ultimately, like, too, like, you know, just like, I think like with the kind of like earlier, I want to wrap back to something you said earlier about like the Pistons Kool-Aid, where you said, you know, you don't feel like this team's going to start getting respect until next year. And it's kind of interesting. Obviously, part of that's because, you know, they're winning. I think the other piece of it too, and you know, I had someone ask me this who's just a casual fan. They're like, hey, I've been hearing a lot of talk that there might not be enough teams in the NBA. That like there's so much talent that it like are we like running too thin? Like do we need more teams? Like genuinely, when I look at like all 30 teams in the league, like sure, there's some exceptions here or there, but like there's a reason to tune into the Charlotte Hornets every night. There's a reason to tune, like the Miami Heat of Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. Even the Wizards have Bradley Beal, who can put up 40 on any given night. Like just teams all throughout the league, all up and down the standings, just have bona fide hoopers. Like even the Sacramento Kings just have like you look up and down their roster, like the amount of buckets that Malik Monk can generate, and he's probably their 7th or 8th guy. Like
it feels like the NBA has turned into everybody's in the game through 3 quarters, and in the 4th quarter, you know, the better team just kind of pulls away. And I think it makes for, when you're talking about showing up and wanting to have hope and seeing your team, whether they're good or bad, looking like some semblance of a team, I think it makes overall product better for the NBA. You know, I don't know how much the league is talented, more so than other years or not, but it does seem like it's more spread out than the eras of absolute super teams that we went through. So now I don't know if this is kind of starting to regress back to more balanced teams or whatnot. But I don't know, man. That's an interesting one, because it does feel like the games today are a lot more. You know, you can see some like, all right, yeah, they're playing with them, and then all of a sudden the wheels kind of fall off in the 4th quarter. And it's like you can understand why they lost that game that way. In the past, if the Pistons were bad, even if they won more games, they looked bad, bro. They looked horrible. I feel like there were Piston teams that years past that looked way worse than the squad we look today. I mean, like no semblance of anything. So I don't know. It's an interesting view.
Yeah, I mean, just like you, I think you look like 10, 11 years ago, and like Steve, you know, like you've been a long time fan of the draft. I remember a decade ago, it was like a genuine like conversation of the one and done was seen as a problem because they're like, you know, in like the early 2010s, the amount of talent that was coming out of the draft was not perceived as the way it was now. Like there was like this, you know, there was this concern of who's the next star going to be? Who's the next star going to be? We have LeBron, you know, we had Jordan before that, but where are we going to find the next star? Now,
yeah, but you're right. The NBA was hurt when Grant Hill got injured.
Right. But like now, there's too many to think of. I mean, like I could genuinely on 2 hands think of guys who could potentially be faces in the NBA. And I don't think it's something you could say 5 years ago. Like just the wealth of talent, like just over the last 5-6 years alone that have come to the league. I mean, damn. I know the shot making's the best it's ever been. I know that for a fact.
Mm.
It's crazy, man. Like you talk about the product of the NBA and and I think that's part of, just like with all the issues that the Pistons faced, it's like, that's why it's hard for a team like that when you don't have any consistency, 25 different starting lineups all throughout the year. How when you're facing teams that are so talented, that have continuity, all those other things that can put them over the top, it's hard to expect them to go out and do that.
Yeah.
Chuck thinks I'm living in the moment. What do you guys think?
I think there's a little bit of to what you're speaking on, but that's where I believe I think we're seeing the regression. I think we're seeing the era change from super team, and I also think we're moving into a positionless era of basketball.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you have where everyone is like at least just from my perspective, we have less positions where everyone is kind of more versatile. And you have the stars along the league kind of more spread out. And I think someone else said in the comments, it might have been Chuck, less superstars necessarily and more just kind of all-stars and stars. I think you get the product that we see today, a brand of basketball where it looks like these guys at least belong in the NBA. Like, I remember there were years when you're looking, it's just like, why is Walter Sleepy Sharp in the NBA? Why is Rodney White in the NBA? We put a lot of guys in the NBA who should not have been in the NBA. I'm not really saying that today. Like when teams are people and signing people and even going and getting people from overseas, we used to get overseas players like, why is he here? Why is he here? Like prospects like Sekou look like a prospect at the very least. At the very least, he looked like, okay, he should be here. He just didn't pan out because the IQ of it all. But yeah, like I don't know. I feel like this is more or less like an era change that we're going into, and things are just getting a little bit more balanced than they used to be.
Right. I would argue part of the reason why it's getting so balanced is because you just have so many different guys who are specialized, and I think you can put that to evolution. You could put that to the level of quality of training that we have, AAU, and the amount of how much these guys are competing at a young age. There's a lot of different factors you can go down. I would just say, I just think we, again, literally 12 years ago, like guys like freaking Asheen to beat was the top 2 pick or top 3 pick in the draft. Taco Fall in 2007 would have been drafted top 5. And granted, some of that's just the league changing, but go ahead, Jalen.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people that can ball. Like if you just look at it, like social media kind of helps that too. Back in the day, you didn't have social media. It was like all this raw footage and stuff like that. But you got these dudes playing in these overtime elite leagues and these. You didn't have that back then. You couldn't go to a team like that and get drafted first round or stuff like that. So it's a lot of people that can hoop. A lot of people overseas that you see that shouldn't be over there that are over there. And you watch them play, you bring them back over here and things like that. But it's just a lot of buckets. I think the league is more so offensive based. I say, because if you can't score the ball, you're not gonna last. So
if you can't shoot the basketball consistently, if you're not a primary ball handler, you're not going to get consistent minutes. I mean, even like they've even said Jalen Duren and James Wiseman and like all the bigs on the Pistons roster, they expect to work at some form on their jump shot. Like that's where we're at in the NBA.
You can't shoot, you can't hoop.
Yeah.
Like that's not how it should be because that's not basketball. It's many elements to playing basketball, being a good player, the defensive specialist, the pick and roll dudes. But if you can't shoot that 3, it's going to be a lot harder. Or even shoot the mid-range, it's going to be much harder for you to get playing time nowadays.
I think the guys who were able, I think if you can follow, if the only way that you're going to consistently get playing time if you can't shoot is if you just bring merciless effort on the defensive end. Like if you're just like a ball hawk, like a Jose Alvarado, like at first he couldn't shoot, but he would just get after it. Eventually he developed a shot, but even guys like Pat Bev, he's not a jump shooter. He's able to stay on the court because he's a pest on the defensive end,
Yep. And I want to find that right that right target like that. Because right now we actually talked about that. I brought up this one point, like, how will we feel about filling out the end of our bench or our rotation players with a guy like Bruce Brown, who might not command a crazy salary? He's shown a few improvements, not necessarily nearly what we want on the offensive side to say we can depend on him as an offensive player. But defensively, in terms of everything we talk about we lost with Jeremy Grant. I do believe we lost something when Bruce Brown was shipped out, because there wasn't a lot of guys who was playing defense and playing the game the way that he was playing it. Though overall the impact wasn't anything that was going to impact this team as it relates to winning. Now, where this team is today and looking to fill in different holes and things of that nature, man, I want guys on the squad that at least has this mentality. I just one question, just personally, I wanted to ask you guys, like, what do you think about Bruce Brown on this squad, end of the bench type guy, or a guy who can kind of fill in like 7, 8, 9 man, in the rotation? Because he's one of those guys, I think defensively, he brings a lot, but Rod, he kind of was like, in this NBA, you kind of almost need a guy who's a defensive specialist that can at least shoot. You know what I mean? Not that they got to be defensive specialists on offense, but at least somebody who, if they're going to be a defensive specialist, that they at least bring in the shot. I see Steve getting warmed up too. What's up, Jeff?
I was there for that. When you guys were talking, I think I was there for that. Bruce Brown is cool, but like, can he score on his own like that here though? Because you got to think a lot of his points in Denver are from number 15 over there, backdoor cuts, slashing. He can shoot the three, he'll get his corner three. Bruce is always good for one shot, but
point center.
He'll get his buckets, but they're fast break buckets. They're slashing backdoor cuts. Is that gonna work with us? I don't know. I like Bruce, and I don't get it twisted, but it's just could just passing him the ball a lot. K could too, but is it gonna work here like it does in Denver? Obviously not, because Joker's it's a Joker, but I'm not opposed to it. If he comes here, he better not lose that jumper he has over there in Denver, but. And all those 10 points, I've seen him just drop buckets a couple of games, man. But I'm not opposed to it.
I will say one thing that I think will make it difficult to have a guy like that, like deep on your bench, is I think you just, with the way that Cade and Ivy both play, I just think you really need that level of shooting. And like, as good as Jaden Ivey's jump shot looked towards the end of the season, we're not quite sure, we're not quite sure like what the trajectory of that, could look like. There's still things mechanically with his shot that he could still improve on. We know he's a gym rat and putting in the work on it, but at the same time, like, also just with his, ability to slash, you've just seen what happens when you don't have those guys that can space. I know at one point it's interesting. We almost kind of asked, like, could Hamidou be that guy? But I think one thing that's been tricky with him as well has just been the battle of staying on the court on a consistent basis. That guy is just a lot of injuries and then a lot of,
and that's
ups and downs.
Yeah, that's the tough part to me, is that the argument we're having right now over a guy like a Bruce Brown, I just wanted to bring him up because he was somebody that was kind of fresh on the minds of Pistons fans. He's going to be somebody that could be signed. He's not going to take a lot to bring him back, but the argument we had, that Rod and I were having, I'm going to bring this up on the next pod, was intrinsically the same argument we had about Jeremy Grant and Bojan Bogdanovic in terms of this defense for offense thing. And I continue to contend that Jeremy Grant brought enough offense and enough shooting. If you look at his numbers here in Detroit, Jeremy Grant did not shoot bad in Detroit. For as much as people said, he shot bad. He didn't shoot bad. That last year's 3-point percentage was what I would consider to be respectable. When you go back and look at it, and you remember why people say get him out of town. It's like, why are we doing this? To me, he brought enough offense to the table and enough shooting to the table. And obviously the defense, to me, was elite compared to what we have right now. That package, to me, mattered. When we got Bojan Bogdanovic, it was a situation that was just like, you know what? He can shoot the mess out the ball. He can space the floor and all of that. But what did they start to say? he is, what he can defend. We need him to play the 4. He couldn't play the 4 right now. We're gonna have to go back to the drawing board on some things. Put him at the 3. They started moving Sadiq Bey around. Started changing up the roster, all because one player couldn't defend the position that he could score at. And so that's where I started thinking about a guy like Bruce Brown. But you're right, where we got to find, or at least Troy Weaver has to find, this mix, these players, because he's steady. I want guys that are 3 and D. These are the tools we don't have. We don't have these guys that can play the 2, 3, 4 and be effective at that position right now. It's not like those guys just grow on trees, man. Steve, I wanted to kind of get your take on it. Like, is there anybody that you see in the league from a Troy target, whether they're a free agent or under contract right now, that kind of fits that mold?
I mean, there are a lot of guys they could trade for, but they don't really have much to trade, right? It's the lottery pick and then guys that they want to keep on this team, right? Duran, Ivy, Livers, I'm pretty sure he's probably not worth that much on the open market. And beyond that, like, they don't have anything, right? So I think that's off the table unless some miracle like Sheed 2.0 happens where they just want to get him out of there and apparently the team doesn't like him as well and you can trade him for whatever. But this man, sorry, Joe, I'm about to say some bad things. But I mean, we got some, as a fan base, we have a bad feeling when you go into a free agent class with a lot of money and a free agent class that is underwhelming. The difficult part of this free agent class is we all want to sign a big name, right? Well, sadly, the big names right now are like Dylan Brooks and maybe somebody like Kristaps Porzingis. Then Draymond Green. Porzingis might opt out of his deal. So it's like you don't want to throw big money at these guys, right? And even then, it's like they have something that works. They have one thing that works, but then they don't have the other component to it. Yeah. So we've been pumping up Cam Johnson. Cam Johnson is a fantastic shooter, but he's more of like a help side defender. He's not necessarily like a guy you want one-on-one in the wing. You just touched on it with Bruce Brown. He would be a fantastic defensive addition like they want. But as Jalen pointed out, like, is his three-point shot going to come with him? Because that's been the thing that's been really up and down. His old teammate at Miami, Lonnie Walker, shot fantastic. But again, his defense isn't that great. He's like 6'4", which again, Bruce Brown is 6'4". So it doesn't really seem like you want them to be the wing defender. So it's just hard. And then there's other guys like a Jeremy Grant who okay, but is he going to accept being the complementary piece now? Because Cade and Ivy have to be 1 and 2 pretty much, right? And then there's Bojan along with it, right? Like, how is that going to factor into it? Do they actually end up moving up from Bojan to get more defense and stuff like that? Yeah, it just sucks because there are a lot of guys that have one side. Like my thought was on the wing to double up with like a Matisse Thybulle and a Cam Reddish, both good defenders, but again, they're not great shooters. Thybulle shot 38.8% in his time in Portland, but his 22 games over the long term, he just hasn't shot that well. Even somebody like Josh Hart, who's, again, a great defender, he'll put up threes, but he just does not have a three-point shot. It's just hard to me to find like the one guy that you really want to sign. And it's like I've been saying all along, singles. They need to just get a bunch of singles, even if they're just like 1-year deals or whatever, to get competent players to fill in, and maybe have one guy that you bet on, like a Cam Johnson. Because if you max Cam Johnson for like 3 years, then there's no overlap with Ivy and Duran's contract. There's 1 year overlap with Cade, and he's somebody that you feel like is just going to work, right? Even if he's more of a rotation piece, like 40% three-point shooter every night, whether out there in the starting lineup or on the bench, that might work. Where I'm going to get scared is if they end up like throwing big money at, say, a Dylan Brooks. That's going to give me like Josh Smith vibes. So
I don't foresee that happening. But what I will say is, like, I do think I would say that it's also not the end of the world if the Pistons elect to be a little conservative this offseason. If they do, if they do decide to get more, like, yes, they could still they can still acquire like contracts for assets in some form and still get some competitive pieces. But like at the same time, like, I think a lot of people are going into this offseason, and I know, people see the tweets about Jaylen Brown and they just go, oh, we got to get him to Detroit. But the only way you're getting him to Detroit, like, is literally either if he somehow, just wants to leave Boston and then just randomly is like, oh, Detroit's cool, or you have to give up the farm. And, like, as much as we all love Jaylen Brown, do you really think if we sign Jaylen Brown to a max contract right now, even if we get Wemby, that we're competing for a championship? Because that's the type of thing you're trying to do if you trade for Jaylen Brown. And listen, as much as I love our roster, no, because Giannis is still a thing.
If I can interject for just one more thing too, the free agent class next offseason has a couple guys that the team should be targeting. Number one being a Jaden McDaniels, that wing defender. That type is exactly the type of player they need, who is that size, 6'8", like 190, 200 around there, is already in that complimentary role. I know he's a restricted free agent, so you probably have to do something like a max to get him. But again, he fits the timetable. He's the exact kind of player you want. I think that should be the play. And I think the one thing we should be feeling okay about is Steve, if they just stick to their modus operandi. Jaden McDaniels on Minnesota, the wing. If Weaver just sticks to his modus operandi, the way he always operates in free agency, it's going to be fine. Mason Plumlee, Kelly Olynyk, Jeremy Grant. They got these guys that they slightly overpay, but they're good NBA players, right? I think just stick to that, please, and don't overpay anybody.
If you're gonna get Jaden McDaniels, Jalen McDaniels, just pad the walls. That's all I'm gonna say, because I don't want him breaking.
As long as we don't have Rudy
Detroit.
Gobert and Kyle Anderson, we're all good.
Yeah, exactly. I know this really, really quickly. Can you share the screen real quick, Kool-Aid? We know Sam Presti's got one man on his mind. Auburn's Jalen Williams will enter the 2023 NBA draft while maintaining his college eligibility. Sam Presti needs to add to the Jalen Williams supremacy. We need 3 Jalen Williams on the Thunder. Rock. Make it happen.
Let's rock, Jalen Williams. Let's go.
All 3 of them showing up to training camp. That's
like Jalen, check in.
Oh my God.
What I was gonna say is, you know what, Steve? You were convincing me that for a while there that Troy probably needs to stand pat. But the more and more I hear it, the more and more I realize sometimes the market, the fit, and the type of player you're talking about may dictate an overpay sometimes if you're Detroit. If Cam Johnson presents the best of all worlds for the Pistons this year, and you know what you have this year, if next year or other years when other players might be available, the Pistons have competition, you know what I'm saying? Do you make the play for Cam Johnson who you think will fit right now? Because if you're saying you're going to continue to kick the free agency can down the road, then we also have to assume that the Pistons are depending on extreme growth for Cade, Ivey, and Duren to step forward into star roles early in their careers, similar to Wade, Bosh, and LeBron James did. Hey, that's the only way I think that this rebuild, because if they go into a year 4 and they don't add significant pieces to get better, if they're just adding kind of chips, man. Right. Just at least from my outlook, you talk about fans who are going to absolutely be like, nah, we're done with this. I don't see that team.
Yeah, and I apologize, Kool-Aid. I think to clarify, I think what I mean is like Detroit doesn't have to spend all of their cap space this summer. Like, they can certainly go and like add pieces, and like when you talk about like long-term, like Detroit can still spend this summer and get players that can help them, now and going forward, but they don't necessarily have to, we have 30 or we can make $40 million in cap space.
I wasn't saying that.
No, I know. And I'm just clarifying is all. I'm just clarifying.
I feel you. And I get that point. I think more or less what I was saying is sometimes there's windows. You know what I mean? Sometimes you have windows, you have contract windows, you got players you're going to have to, pay and this and the other. And if Cam Johnson is the player that you believe will fit, because you said something very, very key, Steve. Cam Johnson might be a guy who just comes here and does his job. He might not be caring about, like Jeremy Grant might be worried about the fact that I know I'm Jeremy Grant, but you talking about Cade, Ivey, Duren, Vic, and even Stu. When Stu's on the court, it's not like Stu is like, hey, I just want to be forgotten. No matter what anyone thinks if he's a starter or not, even Stu, he's going to be somebody that's taken care of on the court. Cam Johnson, to me, seems like the type of guy that how valuable is it to find a guy who will fit in, play defense, play offense the way that you want? How valuable is that? And that's what I was saying, because we're sitting here now saying there's not a lot of guys who fit. We got offensive guys, we got defensive guys, and then we got Cam Johnson and Jeremy Grant. We got one guy who's going to command a bag. We got another guy who might just fit in, even though he might get a little overpay. But next year, who's the guy? I don't know. Who's the guy after that? Like when I started looking at some of these lists, I was like, Cam Johnson's the guy I want this year and next year. Really, when we're talking realistic signings, I want Jeremy Grant. That's a selfish pick, but I keep feeling the more and more, Steve, that you're saying this. How many guys in this league right now who are up for contracts look like Jeremy Grant right now? How many people in the league? That's what made Paul George so special for so long, is the type of 3-and-D wing that he was. Obviously, the clutch, this clutch factor mattered. But the 3-and-D aspect of it, we heard for years, oh, he's the best defensive wing in the league. He's the best defensive wing in the league. If Cam Johnson or even Jeremy Grant and these guys are proven to be somewhat like some of the few guys that can do this, what is that price tag? You know what I mean?
So I got a question for y'all. Who do y'all want someone that's going to come in here and just do their job as a 3-and-D? Or are you looking for that person to come in here and be another scoring option, like truly, not just, because Cam Johnson can give you 25 on 25 or 20 on a wild night. But if you look at Kyle Kuzma, he can probably give you a good 15 to 17. Cam Reddish and Matisse Thybulle may not do that. Cam has a better offensive game than Matisse, but what do you want?
Does he?
I think.
Listen, man. I know Cam Reddish has a lot of believers. I know a lot of us go back and watch his stuff at Duke. I know he's shown way more of an offensive game than Matisse Thybulle in all seriousness. But can we stop at it? I feel like this is one of the most overhyped prospects of the last 5 years. At some point, can we just accept a guy doesn't work, or that he wasn't what he thought we were going to be? It's every year it feels like, I don't know, Cam Reddish, if he goes to another spot, he's almost at a sixth of the league.
Well, the Tom Thibodeau, we can't blame him for that. Tom Thibodeau doesn't play anybody. So, I'll give you that one. But Cam's decent, but yeah, you got a point there.
I'm not trying to poo-poo your on your idea. If he's a guy that Troy would believe in, I trust him. But it's just everyone's like, man, this Cam Reddish guy, if someone gives him a chance, I'm like, he's been in multiple NBA locker rooms at this point. Doesn't it tell you if all of them are nah? Shouldn't that mean something at some point?
It's a little hard. I've seen the spurts. That's why I'm so high on him. I've seen the spurts of him having great games. I haven't seen Matisse Thybulle put the ball on the ground and do stuff. He's like a PJ Tucker type build. But what guy do you strictly want? Because if we're talking that I think fits perfect, and this is a little wild card, besides Clarkson and Cam, that Kuzma one that you bring up, that rings a bell that I feel like if that happens, I'd be very, very shocked, but I'd be very, very happy out of the three, because it's Kuzma, Kuzma's not a bad player. He can't dress, but he's a good player, I like Kuzma. And he's from Michigan, I'm just saying. He can't dress for it. He'd bring us a lot of press, though. That national press, we'll get that.
He does talk a lot of I know a lot of people look at his celebrity and stuff, and I know Spencer Dinwiddie called him out and said he's cares more about being a celebrity and stuff. But if you actually I listened to Kyle Kuzma's episode of the Draymond Green show, and it's he actually cares a lot about winning and the little things, and talked a lot about what he learned from that standpoint with the Lakers. I think, to be honest with you, I think a lot of Kyle Kuzma's true motives will be revealed through free agency, because he has a lot of different paths that he can go down. He can, if he cares about winning, I don't think he's going to be back in Washington, D.C. I think he's going to try and go to a situation where he can contribute. But, that's the thing is some of these guys, if he really isn't about winning, or if he's just about the money or chasing some of that, but I do agree with Steve's assessment earlier, though, of I did look he's listed as a small forward 1 year in his career. And that was perhaps his worst year of his professional career was when they tried to get him on the perimeter. And you talk about, it's already a log jam as it is in the front court. I think for me, I think to answer your question, Jalen, I think I'm looking this is going to sound cheesy. I want a Tayshaun Prince, man, a guy who can come in, play hard on the defensive end, can get you a bucket when you need him to, but isn't that's not his primary focus every night. And I think that's I think that's why Jeremy Grant's so tantalizing, is because he can put up 20 points on any given night, but at the same time, you're confident you can put him on the other team's best defensive player. The one thing I will say, if I'm Jeremy Grant's agent or just Jeremy Grant, if I'm looking between Portland and Detroit right now, I'm asking what the hell's happening in Portland, because listen, we don't know where Dame's going to be going forward. We know that conversations as of right now are Portland's going to try and build around Dame to get a winner now, but they have guys like Shaedon Sharpe, Anthony Simons, guys that they could perhaps trade, but also guys that could perhaps build around. So like and they could also try to reshape up the roster around Dame too. So like Jeremy Grant to Portland isn't like as solid of a thing as people think it is.
Do you want to take a chance on him though again? Because I like him. I like him here, but do you?
Take a chance on him. He was awesome in Detroit.
He was, but do you take up and pass on Cam Johnson or someone like that? Because I feel like Jeremy Grant's he's not ball dominant, but he used the ball a lot. It seemed like when he was here, it was between him and Cade who's going to close the game out. We didn't know who was going to do it. A lot of times the ball went into his hands. Crazy shot. Cade,
there wasn't a Jaden Ivey on that roster though.
Yeah, true. So you bring in Cam. I think Cam would fit. Personally, I think Cam would fit more because Cam won't. I think he won't demand the ball as much as Jeremy will. But now if Jeremy sees Ivy here now, he may take a step back. But I don't know where his head is at. Maybe he's can he be that vet that we want? Because he's older now. He'd be a good vet over Corey Joseph, obviously. But what would he want to do specifically here if he came here?
How dare you diss my man Kojo?
I'm just saying, I don't know what JG's like. I don't know what his motive would be if he came back here. Does he want to have the ball? Does he want to be a defensive player? Does he want to be, just that vet? I don't know what he would want to do if he came back.
Yeah, to answer your question, go ahead, Kool-Aid. Go ahead.
No, you go, Steve.
To answer your question, Jalen, about what do you want? For me, it's defense. They need defense first. If this is the year where they're going to take a step forward, they have to get defenders. I am almost at the point where, I don't care if you can shoot because we already have enough guys that are going to get shots up, right? But I think there are targets that if I were in the front office, I would be, pretty bullish on telling Troy we have to get these guys. Number one, Javon Carter, like we've already laid out. They don't have a point of attack defender. He's a guy that shoots 40%. He might help the Bucks win a title. If you get Charles Lee, bam, then he can probably come in there along with him, right? Perfect Detroit guy. Perfect Detroit guy that they need. And number two, under the radar, Josh Richardson. Not the sexiest name, but solid. 10 points per game. Solid defender.
Steve,
is
a
good shooter no matter what.
A great defender, but that into other conversations like where's Killian Hayes getting minutes? What's because
to the bench? He has to prove. He has to prove now. This is year 4, man. Like this is the time, right? So even if I hate moving Cade to the 3, but if it takes Javon Carter, Jaden Ivey, Cade in there, like that lineup to me sounds like something that can work and that can win at least like 30-ish some odd games, right?
Yeah.
And then Cam Johnson would be the number 1 target because again, like we've been saying, all everybody agrees he fits. That's what we want. We just want somebody.
And if we get like our draft pick, our top 3 draft pick, most likely if we get a top 3. That'd be an extra scoring option. So for players who are used to scoring, they're going to have to realize, we're a young team. Are you going to be able to take that step back? I don't know if JG can do it. I don't know if Cam. I just think that Cam Johnson is my top pick just because, I know he doesn't have to have the ball to make an impact. If you don't understand what we're doing here, just look at our lineup. Look at our draft. If we get Scoot, that's 3 scores. We still got Bogey 2. We get Victor, obviously that's a scorer too. So it's just I love Jeremy I love JG to pop back up, and I've seen Pistons Twitter all over it recently. But I'm scared. I'm just scared. Is he gonna be okay being the 5th or 4th option possibly on this team?
I think we all can agree though, to put a bow on this conversation, because I think a lot of this will be. I think Cam Johnson, in my opinion, and I think we all can agree from the age standpoint, what you're getting in the player standpoint, he fits the timeline. I think he should be the number 1 target in free agency this offseason if I'm Troy Weaver. But Jeremy Grant is sure as hell not a consolation prize.
Jeremy Grant is the player that I actually want. I just feel like from the finances of it all and some of the things you mentioned, that Cam Johnson might just fit a little better. But
right.
Jeremy Grant he's a heck of a player, bro.
He's a hooper.
He's a hooper. He's really, really good. I don't know. I feel like, I hear people talk about this whole notion of him wanting the ball in his hands. Troy Weaver has come out and denied that notion. He's come out and just said, look, who is going to get the ball on that team? You got a rookie Cade. The most experienced individual on that squad who should have had the ball in their hands was Jeremy Grant. And when the defense can load up on you and you're learning how to play that type of position for the first time in your career, you're going to have some falters. And in the first half of the season, he had some falters really trying to lead the team. But I'm going to tell people, as much as we talk about what Cade meant to the second half of his rookie season and that team going from a 200 winning percent to a 400 winning percent, Jeremy Grant was the one that started it off. That Boston game before the All-Star break, Jeremy Grant started to get busy. And the Pistons couldn't do nothing in the third and fourth quarter. And Jeremy Grant was dotting mid-range shots, turnarounds, getting to the rack. He was exposing Grant Williams. It was beautiful. And then, it was necessary to trade him because you have to get a guy like Jalen Duren. You can get the guy who's like in your top 3 on your draft board. They said we had him top 5 and we took him higher than 5. That's what they stated. So you got this man effectively top 3. You got to do everything you can to get him, especially when you're as savvy as Troy and you're only signing guys to 2- and 3-year deals. He's coming back after these rookies are getting good, and now he has the opportunity to say, Jeremy, I treated you well. I sent you where you wanted to go. I paid you when nobody else would pay you, bro. He actually has the opportunity to go if he wants to and sit down because he has the bread and say, let's do this. But it just feels like Cam Johnson, like Sean, like Steve, like Jalen have been saying, it just feels like that man would fit the best, like across the board. It just does.
Absolutely. Well, guys, this has been a great 2 hours of conversation. I want to thank you all so much for joining us. Kool-Aid, it's time for you to get back to your vacation and your family and chilling out. Jalen, Steve, thank you guys so much for joining. I may or may not also have an order at Buffalo Wild Wings that I'm about to go pick up. Talking about wings earlier, but y'all, hold on. It was buy one, get one, by the way. So it was 12 wings. I got another 12 for free.
Oh, come on, man. That's on Tuesday for us down here.
Woo!
When in Zenders, gotta get the chicken wings. I had to get the fried chicken, man. Come on,
yes, sir.
Man, if y'all don't know about Zenders, please look them up. Please,
it's a real deal.
It's not that far from Detroit, too. It's like an hour, something like that, right?
Yep. And I'm bringing some chicken back home.
Oh, 100%. Speaking of bringing it home, thank y'all so much for listening to What We're Pistons Table Talk. If you like this content, like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification button so you're not missing any of the latest and greatest coming from the Woodward Pistons crew. Follow my boy Kool-Aid at Detroit Kool-Aid, Jalen at Jalen HTV, Steve at Resball Pod, and myself at Sean F. Court. But that is going to do it for today, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will catch you guys next week on the OG Pistons Talk Show. What we're Pistons Table Talk.
Hey, let me get some sound effect, bro. Something.
Hey, hey, making my way out of this bitch. We getting windy in this bitch.
Hey, y'all, thank you for being here. Hit that like button on the way out. Subscribe, all of that. Hey, Mr. Jones, as always, thank you for supporting, man. Thank you for supporting. I appreciate it. And if you guys can, stay tuned. We got a lot of good content on the way. Y'all see Steve's stuff is already up and going, and I appreciate him and what he's doing. But we got a lot on the way. Try and get Jalen and Sean in a ring here.
I was locked in, man.
We're gonna work on some stuff, man. I think we got a nice battery. But look, we got a lot of stuff on the way. Y'all, thank you for staying patient. Thank you for supporting us. Next year, we're going to get busy with both the Pistons and the Motor City Cruise, too, as well. I've heard some cool things back. So it's going to be a cool time. Sean, as always, bro, I love doing this with you, man. And absolutely, you guys, Jalen and Steve, thanks for being here. Hopefully, Charles has found his clothes. Hopefully. So hopefully Carl stops talking for the
rest. He found a lawyer and all those people coming for money and checks and stuff, he can prove his voice had nothing to do with it.
Holy
Carl,
stop talking.
Carl with 10 kids is crazy.
Dude, my boy cheaper by the dozen. My gosh. Anyway,
Close us out, man.
we'll catch y'all later.
Peace.
Hit that end broadcast button. We will see y'all later.
Hey, yo.